As it does for most teams, the 2020 season for the Cincinnati Bengals hinges on the quarterback. And for the Bengals, it's a quarterback that they took number 1 overall just a year ago, coming off of a torn ACL that prematurely ended what looked like a promising rookie season. Joining me now from Locked On Bengals, Jake Liscow. And Jake, when you look at what the Bengals did this offseason to try and supplement what this team was last year, along with some of the growth pieces, young players who you hope can take that proverbial next step, what is your outlook for reasonable expectations this season for this team?
A lot, and it's very well documented, hinges on the offensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals. The big acquisition, of course, Riley Reiff to play right tackle. He'll replace Bobby Hart. That is a significant upgrade. However, the fact that at this point in training camp ends on Wednesday, we're still talking about who's going to start at both guard positions. The Bengals drafted Jackson Carman in the second round with the expectation that he would be able to hit the ground running as a standout left tackle on a national championship caliber team in Clemson and learn how to play guard. So far, that hasn't been the case, and he's not in the conversation right now to start at either guard spot. Instead, it's 4th-round rookie from ECU, Deontay Smith, along with a slew of veterans. And so how that shakes out will certainly have a lot to do with Joe Burrow, but it does seem like since there were reports of his struggles and receivers not separating and all of these offensive issues a couple weeks ago, the offense has hit its stride a little bit in camp lately. Burrow feeling a lot more comfortable. Doesn't sound like he's going to play at least in preseason week 2, but he is eager to get back out there and show that he can still take a hit.
You mentioned this issue of separation, and you were on the show before the draft talking about receiver versus offensive line. And you laid out your case, and Cincinnati ultimately went with Ja'Marr Chase. Right now, he has not been the super duper star that maybe Bengals fans hoped he would be. Of course, we have to take it easy with these rookies. We have to expect some growing pains with all of this. But does your perspective change at all here with how the Bengals handled all of this?
I don't think it really has. I can see why people in general are up in arms and they say they could have done the easy thing and taken Sewell, and then maybe the offensive line is not so much of a question mark right now. I will say this about Ja'Marr Chase as well. He just scored 3 touchdowns in practice yesterday. So, the reports about him struggling with separation, I think we can put those behind us a little bit. It seems like he's found his footing a little bit since then in the last 2 weeks. So I think Ja'Marr Chase was a fine pick at number 5, and I can certainly understand the argument to take Sewell there instead. But if you want to criticize the Bengals for not doing enough on the offensive line, to me it comes down to free agency and that period of time when they could have traded for Gabe Jackson for a 5th-round pick is what he ended up going for. They could have signed Kevin Zeitler. They weren't willing to match the Ravens' length of contract there. They could have signed Matt Filer. He instead goes to the Chargers. They could have gotten in and stayed into the end on the bidding war on Joe Toon. They had options in free agency. And then the draft selection of Jackson Carman, well-intentioned, right now doesn't look like he was the correct choice, but it's early. We'll see how his technique develops. They're very bullish, of course, on their new offensive line coach, Frank Pollock, and getting these guys into shape. And so I can still see the reasonability of the plan, and there's still some time for them to execute it properly this year. But ultimately, it's a long-term deal. And if we're back in the same position next year, then it's easy to say the Bengals failed in their plan to protect Joe Burrow. And we'll be saying again, they need to do more to protect Joe Burrow. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I did not mean to imply, if some people thought that I was saying that, we know now if those were good picks. We are not going to write the stories of rookies before they even play in an NFL game. I just know how the reactions work, especially with fans breathlessly reading training camp tweets on Twitter. That is just how this works, unfortunately. So, Jake, as we finish up here, everything sort of breaks right for the Bengals this season. What is that? Not tell me all the things that go right, but what is the ceiling for this team in 2021 then?
Can flirt with a wild card spot if everything goes right. I mean, that's a lot to talk about, of course, but the primary one being the offensive line and the investment on the defensive side of the ball plays out the way that they want it to. at that point, if Joe Burrow comes back and has a reasonably healthy season, it looks like he's feeling a lot more confident. The weapons on the outside that they've emphasized, and with Joe Mixon, are the weapons that we think they are. They're an explosive offense and a good enough defense. You can see that competing. They're in a tough division, though, and the AFC is chock full of good quarterbacks at this point. So it's going to be a tough uphill battle, but that's where I see the upside being if things go right.